Ladies and gentlemen of the beautiful illusion, the misunderstood monsters, the underestimated masterminds, you precious, dangerous things hiding in plain sight, welcome. You walked in, wrapped in silk and silence. Not a threat, not a storm, just light. You smiled the way only the broken can, sweet, clean, and lethal. They saw kindness. They saw softness. They looked at you and thought harmless. But what they missed was the calculation humming behind your ribs. What they didn't feel was the tension under your skin, the restraint of someone who's been patient for far too long. They called you gentle. They had no idea you were choosing not to burn down the whole damn room. You wore innocence like armor, white, pressed, angelic. But that wasn't a halo, that was camouflage, and they walked right into your radius thinking you were a feather, when you were the blade all along. You didn't speak much. Why would you? People reveal everything when they think you're too sweet to matter. You let them write you off, count you out, laugh in their little circles about how soft you looked. You gave them every chance to back off. You gave them silence, you gave them mercy, and they called it weakness. They mistook your stillness for surrender. They mistook your empathy for emptiness. They mistook your softness for stupidity. But underneath that smile, there was a war room, maps, triggers, strategies. You weren't surviving. You were scanning, measuring, waiting. Because you weren't born to scream for attention. You were born to hit where it hurts most. Quietly, perfectly, timed, surgical. They made fun of you when you didn't fight back. They clowned you for not reacting. And in their arrogance, they forgot. Still water doesn't mean peace. Still water means depth. And you're the ocean with bodies at the bottom. You learned to read people like blueprints. You saw every lie before it was spoken. You tracked the temperature of a room like a sniper tracks breath. Not paranoid, not crazy, just alert. Because when you've been betrayed enough times, the world starts looking like a chessboard with broken glass. You didn't dress like an angel to impress. You dressed like an angel to disarm. You knew exactly what that light white glow would do to their egos. You knew how to fold your words into softness. You knew how to look like a lamb in a lion's den and walk out with your hands clean while they bled from wounds they never saw coming. Because you don't attack out of anger. You strike out of design. You waited until they needed you, depended on you, felt invincible around you. And that's when you moved, not loud, not wild, just final. They thought they were playing you. They didn't realize you were letting them build their own cage. Every manipulation they tried was another bar you counted. Every insult was another step deeper into your layout. By the time they noticed, the floor had already shifted, and you were standing there, dressed like mercy, but smiling like payback. Because real power doesn't announce itself. It walks in wearing white and leaves a trail of lessons. You didn't lash out. You recalculated. You didn't raise your voice. You raised your standards. And when the moment came, you didn't flinch. You flipped the whole table. They never saw it coming because you weren't playing the same game. They were busy trying to win arguments. You were out here studying their weaknesses. They were performing. You were documenting. They were trying to be feared. You became unforgettable. You don't need a crown. You wear your scars better than royalty wears gold. Because when you strike, it's not to get even. It's to end the story. You were never chaotic. You were exact, not reckless, precise. Every silence was loaded. Every step was positioned. Every choice intentional. And the most terrifying part? You never raised your hand. You just pulled the thread and watched the whole mask collapse. You weren't loud. You were lethal. Because they thought you came to play, but you came to finish. They looked for warning signs. There were none, because angels don't need to warn demons. They just descend and strike. They started realizing too late. The air shifted, but they brushed it off. The smiles didn't reach your eyes anymore, but they were too arrogant to notice. They thought they still had control, still had leverage, still had you wrapped around their noise. They kept talking, kept performing, kept underestimating, and you just kept polishing the weapon that looked like patience. The kind of patience that doesn't beg, doesn't warn, the kind that collects every misstep like a signature on a quiet, bloodless contract. They laughed at your silence. They didn't know it was a countdown, because when the shift came, it wasn't a scream. It wasn't chaos. It was a surgical dismantling of every illusion they built around you. Every little tower of control they thought they had crumbled. They were still talking to the version of you that needed them, but you had already left. Not physically, not dramatically. You just upgraded inward into a version they couldn't access anymore. They looked confused. Of course they did. They always thought your kindness came from a place of weakness. They couldn't fathom that it came from power that didn't need to be proven. You weren't being nice. You were being measured. And when the moment came, you didn't shout. You didn't explain. You just stopped participating. And they started unraveling. You gave them everything they needed to feel in control. Let them narrate the script, play the main character. They thought you were the audience. They didn't realize you were the editor, quietly deciding what scenes made the final cut. You didn't play the victim. You played the long game. They wanted reaction. You gave them precision. They wanted drama. You gave them absence. The kind of absence that echoes louder than any explosion. You weren't built to prove anything to anyone. You were built to watch empires crumble in your silence. You didn't stab them in the back. You let them walk into a trap you stopped warning them about. You didn't change. You just stopped shrinking. And they panicked. They scrambled to label you too cold, too heartless. Not the same anymore. Of course not. You evolved. You leveled up past their reach. They thought you'd always orbit them. But you were never a moon. You were the eclipse. They tried to come back with apologies, coated in manipulation, tried to re-enter the room with the same mask. But you'd already burned the blueprint. They were knocking on doors that didn't exist anymore. They thought you'd forgive, like before. They didn't realize forgiveness doesn't mean access. They thought they could just talk it out. They didn't understand. You don't argue with shadows. You disappear and let the light expose everything. They underestimated the quiet rage of someone who gave too many chances. They underestimated the wrath of someone who once believed in love harder than logic. They underestimated how deadly it is to betray someone who studied you out of pure hope. You didn't need revenge. You became the lesson. And lessons aren't gentle when they arrive late. You don't sit around hoping they see your worth. You carry it like armor and watch them drown in the realization. Not because you wished them pain, but because they created their own storm trying to destroy your light. And when they looked up, that angel they mocked had wings made of razors. You didn't raise your voice. You raised your standards. And the silence that followed. It was louder than anything they'd ever screamed. They watched you walk past them, untouched, unreadable, untouchable. And their minds scrambled to rewrite history in real time. Maybe you changed. Maybe you became cold. Maybe you turned heartless, but deep down they knew. You didn't flip overnight. You evolved while they were busy feeding off the old version of you. They kept feeding off your grace, your patience, your forgiveness, and you kept pouring from a cup they assumed would never run dry, until the day it shattered in your hands and you didn't bother replacing it. You just walked away from the table. You never needed closure. You became too complete to chase explanations. They expected tears. You gave them silence. They expected begging. You gave them a ghost. They asked themselves why, but they never looked at the trail of damage behind them. The cuts hidden beneath your sleeves. The nights you questioned your worth over people who couldn't even spell loyalty. The 1,000 quiet decisions you made just to keep the peace in rooms that had already declared war on your spirit. They thought they broke you. They didn't see that you were molting, shedding versions of yourself they were never meant to keep. And when the final version stepped out, sharper, colder, focused, you weren't seeking vengeance. You were outgrowing gravity. They mistook your softness for servitude. But there's nothing more dangerous than someone who's been kind for too long and finally realized kindness means nothing to people addicted to chaos. You stopped making yourself small just to fit inside their comfort. You stopped explaining your wounds to people who kept handing you knives. They wanted the old you back, the one who tolerated, overlooked, forgave before the apology. But you weren't built to live on repeat. You were built for one legendary run through the fire, and you walked out wearing it. The angelic look never faded. You just let it sit on top of armor, white on steel, grace over grit, halo with target precision. You walked through storms they threw at you and collected data, not damage. You studied betrayal like a blueprint. You learned how liars breathe, how manipulators smirk, how selfish people decorate their excuses. You learned how to stop loving people who only showed up when it benefited them. And that's when the killer emerged. Not a murderer, not a savage, but a calculated, controlled, deliberate executioner of old cycles. You cut off access. You cut off energy leaks. You cut off conversations where truth went to die. You cut off anything that required you to bleed just to keep the other person comfortable. And it scared them, because nothing's more terrifying than someone who used to need you and doesn't anymore. Someone who used to over-explain and says nothing now. Someone who used to bend backwards and now doesn't flinch when you fall. They kept waiting for the emotional outburst, but you had already buried the parts of yourself they fed on. You didn't destroy them. You just deleted the route back to you. And they'll never forget how the softest person they knew became the one ghost they couldn't exorcise, the one memory that doesn't fade, the one silence that feels like judgment, the one presence that felt like salvation until it turned and walked away with wings folded, never looking back. They still talk about you like a myth, whispers in circles they once ruled, trying to piece together the moment it all shifted, trying to remember when the ground started cracking beneath them, as if you didn't give 100 subtle warnings in every tired smile, in every quiet withdrawal, in every glance that said, "I'm done explaining myself to people who keep showing me they can't hear me." They were never listening. They were waiting to speak, waiting to twist, waiting to win. But you were never playing the same game. You were building exits while they were building thrones made of paper crowns and hollow control. They felt safe in your light, too safe. They mistook warmth for weakness, your boundaries for suggestions, your healing for hesitation. You offered them every chance to grow with you. They laughed. You held the door open long after your spirit said, "Close it." They mocked. You held space for the better version of them they refused to become. They betrayed. And when the final crack came, it wasn't thunder. It was silence. It was the cold shift of your energy, leaving the room without your body moving an inch. That's the moment they felt it. The absence of your softness, the vanishing of your effort, the disappearance of the only person who ever saw them and stayed anyway. They thought they could replace you, mirror your energy, duplicate your depth. But they didn't understand you weren't manufactured. You were forged. You survived things that would have snapped them in half. You carried pain like poetry and turned it into power. You walked through seasons where your only companion was your own voice reminding you, "We're not dying here." And they thought they could match you with charisma and recycled lies. You don't need applause. You don't need validation. You breathe in the silence and exhale clarity. You move like a message, not loud, not soft, just true. They didn't understand that some people shine because they've been burned alive and chose to rise anyway. That the smile they took for granted was earned through scars. That your light wasn't a performance, it was a survival tactic. You're not cold. You're just done pouring into cracked containers. You're not angry. You just refuse to explain your value to people committed to misunderstanding it. You're not bitter. You just stopped tasting poison and calling it love. And somewhere, they're still checking your page, still replaying old conversations, still trying to decipher how someone they dismissed became the silence they can't stop hearing. Still trying to figure out how someone who once would have bled to keep them warm walked away without a single drop spilled. It's not revenge, it's evolution, and you didn't need to burn bridges. You just stopped lighting the path for people who refused to walk beside you. They don't speak your name with confidence anymore. They flinch at it, as if saying it out loud might summon the mirror they've been running from. Because that's what you became. A walking reflection of everything they refused to grow into, everything they lost the right to access, everything they once held. You were the blueprint they weren't ready for. Too layered, too alert, too self-aware to keep tolerating emotional crumbs handed out like grand gestures. You gave them real, and they played fake until real got tired of performing. They used to call you too much, too sensitive, too intense, too complicated. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was, you made them feel seen in places they were hiding from themselves. The truth was, you held them to a standard they had no interest in rising to. The truth was, you were light they weren't ready to stand in. You weren't healing to be loved by them. You were healing to remember who you were before they taught you to doubt it. And when that version of you came back, the grounded, sharp, untouchable one, they didn't recognize you. They thought you lost your heart. They didn't realize you found your spine. You stopped answering texts written in manipulation. You stopped showing up to places where your silence was louder than your voice. You stopped giving out grace to people who weaponized it. And that shift, that was the kill shot, not to their body, to their illusion of control. You didn't scream, you withdrew, you didn't lash out, you just became unavailable, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, vibrationally, not in anger, in alignment. You stopped knocking on doors you had the key to. You stopped apologizing for standards you built from survival. You stopped breaking yourself to feed people who came starving and left you empty every time. They were addicted to your light because it made them feel whole without having to earn it. But light without limits breeds parasites. And you finally turned that light inward. You lit yourself up. You burned through the fog. And for the first time, you saw them clearly. Not through hope, not through trauma, not through loneliness, through truth. They don't come to you for connection anymore. They come for closure. They come with guilt dressed as apologies. But you've read that script. You know how that story ends. You know exactly how they fold under pressure and disguise it as vulnerability. You know how they beg for access, but fumble responsibility. You know how they speak healing with mouths full of poison. And you've stopped drinking from cups that reek of history. You never needed revenge. You just needed clarity. And once it hit, you didn't hesitate. You moved quietly, gracefully, like an angel on a mission, wings tucked, target locked. And when the blade came down, it wasn't out of hate. It was out of finality. You didn't flinch when the door closed behind you. You didn't look back, not because you were heartless, because you were finally whole. They always assumed you'd return, because people like you, the givers, the feelers, the healers, they always come back, right? They break, they mend, they forgive, they stay. But you had nothing left to fix. You stopped trying to heal what refused to admit it was bleeding. You stopped trying to translate your love into languages that only understood power games. You stopped lowering your frequency to reach people who celebrated your silence, but feared your voice. And the moment you stopped, everything about you became dangerous. Not because you hurt people, because you stopped allowing yourself to be hurt by them. You became a threat the second you realized your energy was currency, and not everyone deserves a tab. They don't ask how you are anymore. They already know. You're glowing in places they tried to dim. You're walking taller without the weight of their projections. You're laughing, not because you're over it, but because you finally understand it. You understand exactly who they are, who they were, who they pretended to be. You saw the mask, and then you saw the face underneath. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. They used to call your loyalty clingy. They used to twist your consistency into control. But when you went quiet, when you disconnected, when you vanished from their radar, that's when they felt it. Not just the absence, the difference. Because your absence hits harder than their presence ever did. You stopped explaining your choices. You stopped inviting them to understand. Not out of spite, out of evolution. Because people who don't respect your boundaries will always call your distance an attack. People who can't manipulate you will always label you cold. People who benefited from your confusion will always fear your clarity. You stopped playing therapist to people who never booked a session. You stopped being a safe house for storms that never planned on calming down. You stopped dressing wounds that were self-inflicted and weaponized against your peace. And when you stepped back, the silence didn't echo. It exposed. You don't regret the love you gave. You regret the parts of yourself you handed over without insurance. You regret the conversations you tolerated in the name of keeping the peace, while your own soul was screaming in the background. You regret the days you made yourself small to fit inside their comfort zones, as if your power was ever meant to live inside cages. They never deserved the softness you gave them. They never earned the access they abused. They never matched the effort you gave on autopilot. And you don't blame them anymore. You blame the version of yourself that believed self-sacrifice was love. Well, well, well. Look who finally woke the fuck up. Not just to the world, to yourself, to the storm that lives inside your goddamn ribcage. to the fire you tried to bury so deep. Even you forgot where you left it. See, they don't know what to make of you anymore, do they? Some days you look like you crawled straight out of a church stained in gold and silence. Other days you walk like you just dragged yourself out of a fire pit, still smoking, eyes red, laughing like the devil himself told you a joke only the chosen get. And that right there is what's breaking them. You don't fit their boxes. You don't dance on their strings. You don't flinch when they test you, and that scares the shit out of people who live off fear. You smile too calmly. You speak too boldly. You show up like you belong everywhere, even in rooms they swore you'd never enter. You think they don't see it? The way your presence rattles the air. They whisper behind fake smiles, eyes twitching, unsure whether they're in the presence of salvation or a fucking reckoning. And you just keep showing up. Too loud for heaven, too sacred for hell. A contradiction they can't decode, a storm they can't predict. 1 minute you're light, gentle, almost healing. Next you're pure chaos, wrapped in calm, unshakable, untouchable. Like a god who decided they were done with the rules. You don't play the saint, but you carry mercy. You don't act like a monster, but you don't apologize for your edge either. You're not trying to be liked. You're just done being controlled. And they don't know whether to worship you or run like their lives depend on it. But here's the part that eats them alive. You're not trying to convince anyone of anything. You're not begging to be understood. You're not softening your voice or dulling your edges just to be digestible. You show up as you, raw, unfiltered, and that is the real problem. Because for people who've spent their whole lives performing, for those who built their identities around approval and obedience, watching someone walk through life unapologetically free, that's terrifying. They call you confusing, unstable, too intense. But deep down, they envy the hell out of you, because they see something in you they've never let themselves be. Whole, wild, unchained. You remind them of everything they buried, everything they were told to hide, everything they wish they had the courage to unleash. They can't label you, and humans fear what they can't label. They fear what they can't tame, and they despise what they can't control. You're both thunder and lullaby, both fire and sanctuary. You're the kind of energy that exposes people. You don't even have to say a word. Your existence alone turns mirrors on them. Suddenly they're face to face with their own masks, and your authenticity becomes their breakdown. Because how dare you be all that you are, while they're still hiding behind watered-down versions of themselves. How dare you walk into a room and shift the air when they've spent years trying to be invisible? How dare you survive what should have broken you and come back sharper, smarter, scarier? They don't know if you're a guardian or an omen, a miracle, or karma in human skin. All they know is you're not someone they can ignore anymore. And that eats at them every damn day. Because it means you're bigger than their gossip, you're louder than their doubts, you're realer than their performance, and you're walking proof that people like you, the ones they tried to silence, contain, erase, never die quietly. They want to write you off as too much. But the truth is, you're too real, too rare, too honest for their comfort zones, too alive for a world that glorifies numbness. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need permission to be powerful. And you stopped waiting for them to figure it out, because you realized something they never will. You weren't made to be categorized. You weren't made to be palatable. You weren't made to shrink. You were made to disrupt, to expose, to ignite. They can keep choking on their confusion, keep scrambling to pick sides, angel or demon. But you'll keep walking, laughing, burning, rising. You'll keep being everything they were told they couldn't be, because you're not here to be understood. You're here to be unforgettable. They call it confidence when it's someone they like, but when it's you, when it's that bone-deep, soul-heavy, unshakable presence you carry, they don't call it confidence, they call it danger. Because you walk like someone who's seen the other side of hell and took notes. You talk like someone who's had their whole world collapse and still came back smarter, colder, sharper. You don't flinch when people leave. You don't chase validation like it's oxygen. And that messes them up. Because they need people to need them. They rely on your insecurity to feel powerful. They weaponize your self-doubt just to stay relevant. And here you come, eyes steady, voice calm, energy loud as fuck. Not needing a goddamn thing from anyone. You broke their system without even trying. You became the ghost in their machine. The glitch they can't debug. The signal that keeps jamming their fake-ass programming. Because every time you walk in with that quiet fire, you expose how empty their performances really are. They can't read you. They can't predict you. You're the page in their playbook that got ripped out and rewritten with blood and gasoline. They watch you laugh like you've lost everything, but still found a reason to stand. They watch you breathe like someone who's been buried alive and dug themselves out with nothing but rage and fingernails. They see the way people listen when you speak, not because you're loud, but because you're undeniable, and it burns them from the inside out. Because you didn't just survive what they swore would break you. You evolved. You didn't just heal. You transformed, not into some peaceful, polished version of yourself they could tolerate, but into something untouchable, something raw, something sacred and fucked up and divine all at once. You became the contradiction that shattered their definitions. Because how the hell do they explain someone like you? You don't fit the trauma victim narrative. You're not walking around broken and begging, but you're not cold either. You feel everything, deeper than most. You just stopped letting it make you soft for people who kept cutting you open. You chose to weaponize your scars, turn your pain into armor. You wear your past like a flex, not to prove anything, but to remind them. You've already died once. There's nothing left for them to threaten, and still, they try. Still, they whisper. Still, they pick you apart behind closed doors, trying to figure out what brand of madness or magic you're made of. Because if they knew, if they understood what it took to become this version of you, they'd drop to their fucking knees out of respect or fear. But they'll never know, because you don't hand out the blueprint. You earned this energy through agony they couldn't handle for 5 minutes. You built this presence in silence in rooms that were colder than coffins. And when nobody clapped, when nobody stayed, you kept building anyway. Not for attention, not for revenge, just because something in you refused to die easy. You became too quiet to be dismissed, too wild to be owned, too whole to be manipulated. And while they sit around debating whether you're God's favorite or the devil's apprentice, you just keep walking like both. Because truth is, you didn't come here to be loved. You came here to burn shit down and build it better. To destroy the lies people live in and remind them what real looks like. You're not confused. You're not unstable. You're not playing some twisted game. You are the storm, the whole thing, the silence before, the chaos during, and the clarity after. And they can either learn how to stand in your weather or get the hell out of your way. They don't know how to breathe around you. And it's not because you're loud, it's because you're real. Like, brutally, unapologetically, fuck the script, real. And when you're real in a world that runs on filters, edits, masks, and fake-ass grins, you become a threat by default. Because you don't flinch when things get dark. You don't sugarcoat truth to make people comfortable. You don't tone it down to be more likable. You carry your shadows in plain sight, and it wrecks people who've spent their whole lives pretending they don't have any. You laugh like pain never owned you. You move like fear already tried you and lost. Your whole vibe screams, been through hell, made it home, and I still got teeth. They stare at you like you're unstable, but deep down, they wish they had what you've got. That spine, that edge, that I'll burn this whole shit down before I betray myself. Energy. That don't start none, won't be none frequency. Because they don't get it. They don't understand how someone can be this calm after chaos, this sharp after heartbreak, this focused after being dragged through mud by people they once loved. They think you snapped. Nah. You snapped out of it. You snapped out of the illusion that being good meant being silent. You snapped out of the trap where shrinking was mistaken for humility. You snapped out of the cage built by the expectations of people who never had the balls to live loud. You don't walk in seeking peace. You are the peace. You don't walk in bringing war, but push hard enough, you become it. You've been misunderstood by every crowd you tried to blend into. And when you finally stopped blending, when you stopped shrinking to make space for cowards and copycats, they started labeling you too much, too intense, too different. They call you crazy when they can't manipulate you. They call you cold when they lose access to the version of you that used to beg. They call you dangerous when they realize you've seen too much to ever be controlled again. You used to be soft in places you should have been steel. Used to let love convince you to stay where you were dying. Used to believe you had to earn your worth by breaking yourself into pieces just to feed people who were starving for something you weren't built to give. But not anymore. Now you speak like silence owed you an apology. You carry your presence like a loaded weapon, not to threaten, but to remind. Remind them you're not here to be digested. You're not here to be convenient. You're not here to be safe for people who refuse to face their own demons. They wanted an angel. You gave them fire with wings. They wanted a victim. You walked in dressed like survival, with scars that glow under pressure. They wanted someone predictable, but you don't even know what version of you is showing up next, and that's your fucking power. Your evolution in human form. You're what happens when somebody gets tired of bleeding for people who never bothered to ask if you were still breathing. You're what happens when the pain doesn't kill you. It just teaches you how to aim better. You carry that heavy stare that makes people look away first. That slow smile that feels like a warning. That calm voice that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. You're not performative. You're not loud for show. You're not here to impress. You're here to exist exactly as you are, and that alone is enough to shatter their comfort zones. You walk past people, and their whole body stiffens, like they're bracing for something their nervous system can't decode. And it's not because you're aggressive. It's not the way you move. It's the frequency you move on. Like your soul don't answer to the same damn rules that broke theirs. They feel it before they see it. That tension, that weight, that energy that hits before you even speak. You enter a room and the oxygen shifts. They're looking over their shoulder like something ancient just woke up behind them. And they're right. Because you carry weight that doesn't need noise. Presence that doesn't need validation. You're not wearing confidence like an outfit. You became the confidence. You are the aftermath of everything that didn't kill you. You are the return nobody saw coming. The storm they thought they buried. Coming back, wearing a calm face and bulletproof skin. People don't fear you because you're mean. They fear you because you're not afraid to be seen. Because you show up with all your shit out in the open. Scars, rage, truth, love, chaos, clarity. All of it. Raw. Real. Loud without yelling. That kind of honesty, it undoes people. They built whole personalities out of performance. Spent years pretending to be okay. Pretending to be good. Pretending to be in control. And then there's you. Existing like you don't owe anybody a fucking explanation. Like you finally looked in the mirror and said, if I'm too much, go find less. You're not hard to understand. They're just not used to people who don't play small. You let go of the version of you that begged. The one that chased. The one that kept trying to translate your soul into a language fragile people could understand. You got sick of starving just to feed people who wouldn't share their plate. Sick of folding yourself into shapes you were never meant to be just to fit into rooms you never belonged in. There's no apology in your eyes anymore. There's no ask. You stopped knocking on doors. Now you kick them in or you build your own. They're not confused about you. They're confused about how you survived. How you still laugh like something beautiful didn't almost break you. How you still love like betrayal didn't carve its name into your spine. How you still walk like something bigger than pain lives inside you. And yeah, they stare. They call you unstable because they can't predict you. They call you arrogant because you refuse to shrink. They call you dangerous because you won't hand over your power just to make them feel safe. But deep down, they wish they had your fire. They wish they had your clarity. They wish they could live one day without performing for a world that's allergic to truth. You became what they tried to destroy. You became the one thing they said you never could be. Unfuckwithable. Unapologetic. Unrecognizable to your old self in all the best ways. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving them wrong. This is about becoming so fully you that their projections bounce off your skin like static. They keep trying to figure out where the switch flipped. Like one day, you just woke up different. But the truth is, this version of you didn't just happen. It was forged. In silence, in chaos, in nights that chewed you up and spit you back out without a damn warning. You didn't just evolve, you had to. Because life stopped giving you safe exits. Because people stopped being soft places. Because every time you reached out, you got handed another blade to bleed with. And eventually, you stopped reaching. You started rising. That edge in your voice? Earned. That stillness in your face, trained. That don't fuck with me energy that wraps around your aura like barbed wire. Built from scratch. You didn't get here on accident. You built this self from the wreckage of every version that begged to be seen. And you don't flinch anymore. Because there's nothing left in this world that can take from you what you already watched burn. They whisper like you're some cautionary tale. But your story isn't a warning. It's a fucking blueprint for what happens when someone decides they'd rather be alone than fake. When someone decides they'd rather be misunderstood than manipulated. When someone chooses freedom, even if it means being feared, you're not unstable. You're unavailable to bullshit. You're not angry. You're done explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you anyway. That smirk you wear when they try to press you, that's not attitude. That's memory. Memory of how many times you bit your tongue for people who didn't deserve your silence. Memory of how many nights you stayed quiet just to keep a fake peace intact. Memory of all the doors you held open for people who walked in just to tear you apart. You're done being polite with your power. You're done being digestible just to keep fragile egos from cracking under your truth. You walk different now. Talk different. Feel different. Because somewhere along the line, you realized you're not responsible for making yourself smaller just so people don't feel insecure around your shine. You became the version of you that doesn't ask. You decide. You don't knock anymore. You walk through like you built the place. Because you did. You built yourself out of rock bottom. You climbed out of trauma with no map, no rope, and 1,000 voices hoping you'd stay down. You looked your demons in the face and didn't flinch. You kissed rock bottom on the mouth and told it, "Watch me." That's what they can't handle, that they tried to break you, and you came back looking like a myth people whisper about, that every piece they tried to shatter, you rearranged into armor, and every version they tried to kill, you buried like a ritual, then rose anyway. They're not scared of you because you're evil. They're scared of you because you don't need their approval to breathe. Because you're no longer walking around trying to be chosen. You're walking like someone who chooses themselves first. You don't blink when they try to provoke you anymore. You just watch. Still sharp, calculating, like a storm waiting for a reason, because you've seen this play before. The fake concern, the forced smiles, the subtle digs wrapped in compliments. You felt the sting of that passive-aggressive bullshit, and you've learned how to spot a snake with a pearl tongue a mile away. They try to test your patience like you're still that soft-hearted version of yourself who gave people second, third, fifth chances just because you saw the good in them. But that part of you, that part died the day you realized good means nothing if it comes with a knife in the back. That part stopped breathing when you learned that love without respect is just manipulation in disguise. You don't let people get close just because they're consistent in showing up. Because even poison can be consistent. You watch actions, you listen to tone, you feel energy, and if it's off, you're gone, before they even notice they've been cut off. That's what makes you terrifying now. You don't scream, you don't explain, you just vanish, quiet and clean like a professional hit. No drama, no announcement, no mess. Just absence. And for people who used to feed off your energy, your absence feels like suffocation. They don't know what to do without access to your light. They never thought you'd stop setting yourself on fire just to keep their cold hearts warm. They assumed your loyalty meant servitude. They confused your forgiveness with weakness. They underestimated the quiet ones again. Until the quiet one came back with scars that tell stories in languages their souls can't understand. They don't get it. They still think power looks like being loud, being liked, being followed. But your kind of power, it's in the silence, in the way you don't react when provoked, in the way you sit in a room full of liars and still hold your truth like a loaded gun across your lap. You're not playing defense anymore. You are the line, you are the boundary, you are the consequence they never prepared for. And it shows. In the way they flinch when you speak truth without hesitation. In the way they stumble to keep their mask on when you look at them like you already know.